Today on the show, let's unpack the Supreme Court's landmark ruling in the Mahmoud versus Taylor decision that just might mark a turning point in the battle for America's soul. This case isn't just about books in the classroom, it's about the state inserting itself between parents and their children. It's about belief systems being challenged under the guise of inclusion and whether we're finally seeing a course correction back to common sense. What do you think, Mike?
I think we are having a course correction back to common sense to pick up where you ended your sentence. I think over the last bunch of years, there's just been a lot of noise, particularly surrounding very fringe kind of issues, and we've talked about this before on many different podcasts. But I'd like to say that the Supreme Court is making decisions based on law, which I think all of us can, to some extent, agree that the Supreme Court's been politicized to some extent, and that's no different than it has been for throughout history. Obviously, the people that get onto the court have biases, right? They have opinions, they have backgrounds, they're human beings. But I think that the swing towards you could look at it this two ways. The court has swung conservatively, or you could look at it that it has swung more towards common sense. Now, those two things at this exact time frame or period of time might be one and the same. It just so I don't want to make it sound like I'm supporting the conservative idea necessarily, but it just so happens that right now in history, it would appear that the conservatives and common sense are more aligned than liberals and common sense. What would you say to that, Phil?
Not only would I say it's common sense, I think that the court had no choice if they were simply going by how American law works. Uh, I'm very close to this ruling. I grew up. I try to refrain from giving particulars about my growing up, but here we go.
All right,
I,
here we go.
I grew up. Well, no, I'm not going to give that part of the information. I grew up in a religion that literally holds the record for most uses of a law called can't think of the name of it. It was used for this. I got to look it up. Um, I think I can't think of the name of the law, Mike. But
Okay.
in the religion that I grew up in, they followed the Bible to the letter. And when I mean the letter, I mean to the letter.
Yep.
So one of the things that they used to have a legal issue with was blood transfusions.
Oh, right. Yep. Hmm.
And so this religion literally has the record for most times going to the Supreme Court legal actions.
Hmm.
And we would literally hear about those actions when we would go to what they call their church the Kingdom Hall. So I used to, I mean, hear all of these things. They've been involved in things like this since 1944.
Yep.
And they would win these legal actions because of this law basically saying that your child is under the governance of the parent over the child. I mean, over the
Yep.
government.
Hmm.
And that's the law. I can't believe I can't find the law, but it's a basic law. And in order for them to have not ruled this way, they would have had to overturn about 80 years of Supreme Court decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that you see that to some extent in the movement in general. What we're seeing right now is that the decision making authority is going back to more traditional roots, meaning it's going back to families, it's going back to local communities, it's going back towards the states. And obviously, I mean, I don't want to open up an entire can of worms here, but I'm gonna, because that's what we do on the podcast. Um, my liberal friends like to say that this is the what do you call it, the 2025 agenda, right? Like this was all preordained before Trump got elected. And to some extent, they are running with that playbook. And I know you're going to bring this up, and I don't want to get into it immediately. We're going to talk about today. We're also going to talk about that Congress has now passed. Donald Trump is signing the one big beautiful bill, but many parts of that have to do with putting the responsibilities back on communities and smaller organizations, states, people. And that's just a trend. And that, by the way, that was also preordained in the Project 2025 as well. It's because a lot of that big, beautiful bill is part of Project 2025, right, Phil? I mean, what do you think of that? Because the liberal people out there are arguing like this is the end of the world because I told you so. They're like, I told you so. They're Project 2025. Told you they're going to do it. They're going to do it.
So before I get into the details of answering your question, I want to pull back a second
Okay.
and say, if I said, okay, liberals, the ones who are actually in office, you go in and you write your own new bill,
Mm-hmm.
totally autonomous to everyone else. You write it exactly how you want. And I guarantee you, I can read that bill and say those same exact statements about some things that are in that bill
Mm-hmm.
and say, this is from 2025
Yeah.
or some other thing. You can always draw contrasts and comparisons to things, whether it's real or not.
Sure.
So that's the first thing, is that in general, how are you going to write a bill with the intent of it just not being similar or have any uh ability to be compared to other things? Now,
Yep.
getting exactly into your answer, I haven't seen anything in the bill yet, whether it's 2025, 2026, whatever you want to call it, that is that concerning. There are things that I have preferences about, but they're trying to frame it like it's a pre-Nazi thing,
Mm-hmm.
or this is the lead up to socialism, or like it's something really, really crazier than it is. Because there's things in the big beautiful bill that I don't like, but I'm not going to reference some horrible thing and try to make them the same. Am I making
So,
sense?
so what you're totally making sense. I don't know how many of our listeners out there have actually paid a lot of attention to this bill, and I have spent a fair amount of time reading and studying and looking over it and listening and quite frankly reading opinions that I've seen on various networks ranging all the way from MSNBC to Newsmax. And other than the fact that it is Donald Trump's largest domestic policy bill of probably of both of his terms. And if you don't like Donald Trump, obviously you've got to be against this, regardless of what it says. Doesn't matter what it says, you just got to be against it because that's how it works in politics. I don't really see a whole lot in this that is super radical or earth shattering or changing anything that really is going on right now. There's some defining, and by the way, most of the stuff, particularly when it comes to the tax part of it, is really extending and making permanent things that are already in place. Some of the stuff is beneficial for various segments of the population. And I know if you're on the anti-Trump side, you're going to say that's for the wealthy, and if you're on the pro-Trump side, you're going to say that it's for the people. But I mean, obviously, the truth lies
We
somewhere in
we gotta
between.
stop. We gotta stop that. That bro, that is flipped. That is flipped since the Obama era. All the rich, educated, haughty-taughty people are in the liberals now.